transferred to the Azure storage. We don't have to worry about it. So that was inside the application. And what happens when we want to do the remote configuration? As we discussed, it is a very important part in cloud kind of environment. We should be able to remotely configure our diagnostics configuration or diagnostic monitoring information. So look at this. So this was a role instance which we already looked at, and imagine we have some diagnostic configuration already configured, and it is able to do all the transference and everything is working fine. Now I want to do it from outside the cloud. I want to remotely configure it. As I already mentioned, that this configuration information is always stored in the database, that is Azure storage, in a blob. So that is your information. You can access it remotely. Either you can download, change, and upload it, or there are PowerShell commandlets, PowerShell scripts or PowerShell commandlets available to modify it using secured certificate access to that. So you modify that information and you upload it again to the database, that is blob. And your diagnostics monitor is always polling that storage to see if there is any change in the configuration. There is any change in that configuration file. If there is any change in the configuration file, it will pull that file onto the diagnostics monitor and configure itself accordingly. And see here, you can see here that poll interval actually take the file and put it onto the role. So it configures the role to behave according to the new changes which are done, and it will update itself. And next time onwards, you'll start monitoring the diagnostics as per what you have configured from remotely. So that is a very important part of Azure Diagnostics. After talking about how to remotely configure it, let us come back and see what are the ways or mechanisms by which we can configure the diagnostics. The first one is enable programmatically using there is a class, static class called as diagnostics monitor .start method. So before that, we can actually set up the configuration parameters, saying that I want to monitor the logs, I want to monitor event logs, I want to monitor performance counters, those kind of information, and then you can call a method called as diagnostics monitor.start. You can also do that specifically on a role instance. So there is another class called a role instance diagnostics manager, which is for a role instance basis. So you'll have to do that once the basic default configuration is done. You can actually do that on the role instance also, and you can do that declaratively too. So there is a XML configuration file which is recently, I think it was introduced in 1.3, yeah, 1.3 SDK. So you can actually use this XML file and keep it along with your role deployment bin folder, and the role will actually start taking that configuration from the diagnostics.cfg file. This file is very useful in terms of VM roles, because in VM roles there is no startup or on role start method which we get access to. So for VM role, the only mechanism to configure your diagnostics is to use this diagnostics.cfg file. And there are lots of diagnostics tools to do it from outside and monitor or get an all large information from table storage. So tools like Azure Ops, which is a third-party tool, Azure MMC, this is available on Coldplex, Operations Manager, Cerebeta. There are a few open source free products, or some of the tools are actually available. We have to pay for that. So if you need to get Azure Ops trial, you can visit on the site Opstella, and a very powerful tool to do that kind of thing. Let us see.